It looked like it's happening. Angel Reese is asking out of Chicago already.
Angel Reese officially puts the Chicago Sky on notice. We're not doing the same thing this offseason that we did last offseason. Stop bringing me bums to play with.
What happens when the player who demanded to be the face of a franchise becomes the one that the franchise can't trust? That's the storm surrounding Angel Reese right now, a storm of suspensions, locker room fallout, and whispers that her time with the Chicago Sky may already be unraveling. Not long ago, Reese was hailed as the next big personality in the WNBA, bold, outspoken, and unafraid to challenge anyone. But in pro sports, confidence can turn into controversy in the blink of an eye. And lately, Reese's boldness hasn't just made headlines, it's made enemies. From calling out her own teammates to clashing with veterans, to piling up technical fouls that left her suspended during critical games, her story has become less about dominance on the court and more about drama off it. And here's where the story cuts even deeper. While Reese has stumbled into chaos, her biggest rival Caitlin Clark has done the opposite. Clark has dealt with injuries, double teams, and relentless pressure as the league's most targeted rookie, yet she's become a stabilizing force in Indiana. While Reese sits suspended, Clark shows up courtside in street clothes to cheer for her teammates. While Reese demands great players be put around her, Clark has turned the Fever's roster into a playoff-caliber team through sheer leadership. This isn't just about two young stars taking different paths. It's about the future of two franchises, and the contrast between a player seen as a cornerstone and a player already being viewed as a liability. So buckle in, because this is the story of how Angel Reese went from the Sky's biggest hope to their biggest problem, and why her rivalry with Caitlin Clark now feels less like competition and more like a warning. The controversy started not with a missed shot or a bad game, but with Angel Reese's own words. In an interview with the Chicago Tribune, she didn't hold back. Reese flat out said she needed great players around her if the Sky wanted to win. On the surface, some fans defended her after all. What star doesn't want more talent beside them? But the way she said it, and the timing, turned ambition into arrogance in the eyes of many. Instead of rallying her team, her words cut deep. Reese was a rookie, not yet battle-tested in the league, and already she was demanding reinforcements as if the roster around her wasn't good enough. Critics called it entitlement. Supporters said it was just confidence. But inside the locker room, it sparked something worse: tension. Veterans, who had sacrificed and built careers through years of hard work, weren't thrilled to be dismissed by a first-year player. Younger teammates, many of whom were still finding their own roles, were left wondering if Reese valued them at all. Reports surfaced that the comments led to uncomfortable conversations among players, with one even describing the atmosphere as tense and divided. The timing couldn't have been worse. Chicago's season was already teetering, with the Sky fighting to stay afloat in the playoff picture. Instead of uniting the team, Reese's comments created division. Fans picked sides online, some cheering her boldness, others blasting her for throwing teammates under the bus. And if the words weren't enough, the tone sealed the reaction. Reese didn't sound like someone challenging her squad to rise higher. She sounded like someone who wanted the roster around her replaced. That difference turned what could have been seen as competitive fire into a storyline of selfishness. From that moment forward, Reese wasn't just a rookie forward trying to make her mark. She was a lightning rod, a headline machine, and not always for the right reasons. But the fallout didn't stop there. Because if calling out teammates stirred the pot, her next move, dismissing veterans who had already proven themselves, would light the fire even hotter. If Reese's first comments about needing great players caused tension, her next remarks poured gasoline on the fire. In another conversation, she reportedly brushed off veteran point guard Courtney Vandersloot as being too old to make an impact. For casual fans, it might have sounded like a rookie simply being blunt. But for those inside the WNBA, it was something close to sacrilege. Vandersloot isn't just another name on a roster. She's one of the most accomplished floor generals the league has ever seen, a multiple-time All-Star, a champion, and the kind of player whose passing instincts have redefined how point guards are judged. To dismiss her as too old wasn't just disrespectful, it was ignorant of everything Vandersloot has accomplished, and it painted Reese as someone who hadn't yet earned the right to make such judgments. The backlash was swift. Veterans around the league took notice, and even some of Reese's own teammates reportedly felt embarrassed by the comment. Instead of presenting herself as a hungry rookie ready to learn, she looked like a starlet who believed she already knew better than those who paved the way before her. Fans weighed in too. Social media exploded with takes. Some supported Reese's fire, arguing that maybe she was just being honest about the need for younger, faster teammates. But most saw it as blatant disrespect, the kind of thing that alienates not just a locker room, but an entire league. The timing made it sting even worse. Chicago had just tried to reshape its roster to give Reese a chance to shine, moving assets and making trades to create space for her. The front office was bending over backward to build a team that could complement her game. Yet here she was, already taking public shots at veterans, as if their experience and sacrifice meant nothing. That comment about Vandersloot became a turning point. It wasn't just a rookie speaking out anymore, it was a narrative. Reese was being cast as the villain, the player too arrogant to respect those who came before her. And in a league where veterans carry enormous influence, that's the last image you want to create. But the drama didn't stop there, because while her words alienated veterans, her next move, complaining even after the team sacrificed pieces for her, made her look not just arrogant, but ungrateful. The Chicago Sky weren't ignoring Angel Reese. In fact, they were doing the opposite. The front office had already taken big swings to reshape the roster in hopes of giving her the help she claimed she needed. One of the biggest moves came when they traded away rookie Sonia Citron, a promising young guard with plenty of upside, in order to bring in Ariel Atkins, a veteran scorer who could provide immediate impact. It was a move that signaled urgency. Citron was the type of player franchises usually hold onto, a long-term piece. By flipping her for Atkins, Chicago sent a clear message. We're trying to win now, and we're doing it for you. But instead of showing gratitude, Reese doubled down. In interviews, she made it sound like the efforts weren't enough. Her demands for great players didn't soften after the trades. If anything, they sharpened, creating the perception that nothing the front office did would satisfy her. That's where the narrative began to shift from confidence to ungratefulness. Critics pointed out that most rookies spend their first year adjusting, learning the speed of the pro game and fitting into the system. Reese, by contrast, was already dictating who should and shouldn't be on the roster, even as the team was actively making moves to help her succeed. The sacrifices didn't just affect roster construction, they affected chemistry. Moving players like Citron disrupted relationships in the locker room, and bringing in new faces mid-season meant others had to adjust their roles on the fly. Instead of being a unifying figure, Reese was seen as the source of that disruption. Fans noticed too. On social media, many began questioning why Chicago was bending so much for a player who hadn't yet proven she could carry a team at the professional level. The Sky were sacrificing assets, burning goodwill, and reshuffling roles, all while their supposed franchise centerpiece continued to air frustrations publicly. The optics were brutal. A franchise giving Reese what she asked for, and Reese acting like it wasn't nearly enough. And that perception only worsened once reports of locker room friction started to leak. Because while front office sacrifices might frustrate fans, what really breaks a team is when the players inside the locker room stop trusting each other. And that's exactly what was about to happen. By this point, the Chicago Sky weren't just dealing with losses on the scoreboard, they were dealing with losses in trust. Angel Reese's public demands for great players had already rubbed veterans the wrong way, and her dismissive tone toward names like Vandersloot only deepened the divide. But what truly fractured the locker room was how her attitude toward her current teammates began to surface. Reports suggested that Reese wasn't just critical of veterans, she was brushing aside younger teammates too. Players like Haley Van Lith, who had carved their own reputations in college and were still adjusting to the pros, were quietly dismissed in conversations. Instead of building chemistry with the younger core, Reese's comments created an us versus her atmosphere. And when a locker room feels split, everything else starts to unravel. Practices grew tense. Team meetings turned uncomfortable. One insider described the energy as walking on eggshells, with players unsure of what Reese might say next, or whether their names would be dragged into another headline. Instead of being a unifying leader, Reese had become a common enemy. Some teammates reportedly grew tired of the constant drama, frustrated that they were giving maximum effort only to be overshadowed by off-court storylines. The irony was impossible to ignore. The rookie who wanted great players around her was now the reason those same players felt unappreciated. The consequences weren't just emotional, they were visible on the court. Chemistry broke down. Defensive rotations lagged. The ball stuck in players' hands instead of moving freely. The Sky started looking less like a team and more like a collection of individuals trying to figure out who they could actually trust. Coaches tried to patch things up, calling team meetings to reset the tone. But it's hard to rebuild trust once it's been shattered. And in the background, the noise from fans and media only amplified the dysfunction. The storyline wasn't about Chicago's playoff push anymore. It was about whether their supposed franchise player was already tearing the foundation apart. The drama had spilled from words into relationships, and from relationships onto the court. But if chemistry issues were bad, what came next pushed things over the edge because Reese's struggles weren't just in the locker room. They were now glaring in her own performance. Up to this point, Angel Reese's controversies were mostly off-the-court interviews, locker room dynamics, and questions about her attitude. But eventually, the spotlight shifted to where it always does: performance. And that's where the story became even harder to defend. Stat sheets can be deceiving. On the surface, Reese's numbers didn't look terrible. She was putting up double-doubles at times, grabbing rebounds, and scoring enough to suggest she was contributing. But a deeper look revealed cracks. Reese wasn't efficient. Her shooting percentages hovered in shaky territory, her turnovers piled up, and her decision-making often stalled Chicago's offense instead of igniting it. In fact, despite missing games, Reese still managed to lead the league in turnovers. That stat alone painted the picture of a player forcing the issue, trying to do too much, or simply not adjusting to the pro game's speed. For every flashy rebound or bucket, there was often a miscue on the other end that swung momentum back to the opponent. Then came the technical fouls. Reese's fiery personality, which had once been celebrated as passion, started crossing into recklessness. She racked up unnecessary technicals for arguing with referees, showing frustration and failing to control her emotions in high-pressure moments. The league took notice, and eventually, it cost her. A one-game suspension for accumulating too many technical fouls sent a brutal message. Even the officials had run out of patience. The timing of that suspension made things worse. She missed a crucial matchup against Indiana, a game dripping with storylines, especially given her ongoing rivalry with Caitlin Clark. Fans circled the date, expecting fireworks between the two rookies. Instead, Reese wasn't even on the floor. The stage was set for her to silence critics, and she wasn't there to take it. For the Sky, the impact was twofold. They lost a starter, and they lost credibility. How could they trust their supposed franchise cornerstone when her own behavior was getting her sidelined during must-win games? For teammates already frustrated with her public comments, the suspension felt like proof that she wasn't fully locked in. And for Reese, the optics were devastating. Instead of leading her team in a pivotal matchup, she was trending online for the wrong reasons. Instead of being praised as a fighter, she was labeled a liability. The numbers told one story. The suspensions told another. But perhaps the most damning piece of evidence was what happened when Reese wasn't on the floor, because sometimes, the Sky looked better without her. The harshest reality for Angel Reese wasn't just the suspension itself, it was what happened when she wasn't on the court. Because in the games where she sat, something strange, and maybe even damning, began to emerge. The Chicago Sky often looked freer, sharper, and more connected without her. It wasn't that Reese brought nothing to the table. Her rebounding was still valuable. Her size and presence under the rim mattered. But basketball isn't just about numbers, it's about flow. And when Reese was absent, the Sky's offense suddenly flowed better. The ball moved faster, players cut harder, and possessions didn't die in the post. Guards who had struggled to find rhythm with Reese clogging the paint suddenly looked more confident, hitting shots in rhythm and finding open lanes. Defensively, the same pattern appeared. Without Reese gambling for boards or overcommitting, the Sky rotated more smoothly. Communication improved. Everyone seemed more locked in. Instead of relying on one player to cover mistakes, Chicago defended as a unit. The irony was brutal. Here was a rookie who demanded great players around her. Yet when she stepped aside, those same players finally got the chance to shine. The team didn't just survive without her at times, they thrived. For coaches, this created a dilemma. Reese had the star power, the name recognition, the headlines, but the tape didn't lie. The Sky's best stretches of basketball often came when she wasn't part of the lineup, and that raised uncomfortable questions about whether she was truly the cornerstone to build around or whether she was holding them back. Fans noticed too. Social media lit up with side-by-side comparisons of the Sky's performance with Reese versus without her. Clips circulated showing the ball zipping around the court in her absence, contrasted with the stagnant, turnover-heavy possessions when she was on the floor. Some fans even began asking the unthinkable. Was Chicago better off without their supposed franchise player? For Reese, the optics were disastrous. Every suspension, every injury absence, every benching became another chance for critics to highlight how the Sky functioned more smoothly without her. And in a league where reputations can harden quickly, that narrative was beginning to stick. But the contrast became even sharper when you looked across the court at her biggest rival. Because while Reese's absence raised doubts, Caitlin Clark's presence, even when she couldn't play, raised everyone around her. While Angel Reese was building a reputation for suspensions, drama, and locker room friction, Caitlin Clark was writing a very different story in Indiana. Both rookies entered the league with massive hype. Both were expected to change the trajectory of their franchises. But the way they've handled the pressure couldn't be more different. Clark has faced constant adversity since the day she stepped onto a WNBA court. Opponents have thrown double teams, hard fouls, and endless physicality at her. Every game feels like a test, every mistake amplified under the brightest spotlight in the sport. And yet, instead of complaining, Clark has met the challenge with resilience. She takes the hits, she gets back up, and she keeps leading. Even when injuries sidelined her, Clark showed up courtside in street clothes, supporting her teammates, cheering every bucket, and staying locked in as if she were still on the floor. That kind of presence doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but it matters. Teammates feel it, coaches notice it, fans respect it. Leadership isn't just about what you do when you're playing, it's about how you carry yourself when you're not. On the floor, Clark has already elevated those around her. Aaliyah Boston looks like a future MVP with Clark feeding her in the post. Kelsey Mitchell is thriving, putting up career highs while Clark draws defenses her way. Role players like Lexi Hull and Nalissa Smith have grown more confident, knowing Clark will find them if they work to get open. She doesn't just score, she makes the entire team better. The maturity is striking. When Angel Reese blasted her teammates for not being great players, Caitlin Clark was praising hers, even after tough losses. When Reese picked up technical fouls for arguing with refs, Clark calmly absorbed contact and walked back on defense. When Reese missed a showdown against Indiana because of suspension, Clark was the one hyping her teammates from the sideline. Even Reese herself once admitted that Clark was good for the game. And the irony is that truth becomes clearer with each passing week. Clark is good for her teammates, good for her franchise, and good for the league as a whole. 2 rookies, 2 spotlights. But while one spotlight has become a warning sign, the other has become a beacon. And that contrast sets the stage for an even bigger question. What does this mean for the futures of Chicago and Indiana? The Angel Reese-Caitlin Clark rivalry was supposed to be about highlight reels, box scores, and playoff races. Instead, it's become something much bigger, a study in leadership, culture, and how one player can define the direction of an entire franchise. In Chicago, the sky are sinking into uncertainty. What was supposed to be a fresh era built around Reese now feels like a gamble that's backfiring. The front office sacrificed assets, shuffled rosters, and gave her every chance to succeed, only to watch the team unravel under the weight of suspensions, friction, and unmet expectations. Instead of building trust, Reese has fractured it. Instead of elevating her teammates, she's alienated them. And instead of being the spark that reignites the franchise, she's become the headline for all the wrong reasons. Meanwhile, in Indiana, the opposite is unfolding. Caitlin Clark has turned the Fever into one of the league's most exciting young teams. Even through injuries and adversity, she's given her franchise something priceless: belief. Belief that they can compete, belief that they can grow, belief that the future is worth investing in. Every game feels like a step forward. Every performance another building block towards something sustainable. The difference couldn't be clearer. One rookie has her franchise asking whether they chose the right star. The other has hers convinced they struck gold. One has left teammates doubting her leadership. The other has teammates calling her the glue that holds them together. And that's why this rivalry has shifted from hype to symbolism. It's no longer just about who wins the box score. It's about who wins the trust of their locker room, their fan base, and ultimately the league. Clark has already earned that trust. Reese, for now, is still fighting not to lose it. So when fans ask, who would you build a franchise around, the baby goat or the self-proclaimed Bayou Barbie? The answer says more about the future of the WNBA than just one game ever could. Let's finish strong with the conclusion. Contrast of leadership and final question. This will tie the narrative threads together, leave the audience with a powerful takeaway, and end on a thought-provoking note. In the end, the story of Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark isn't just about 2 rookies trying to find their footing. It's about what happens when confidence turns into controversy and when pressure transforms into leadership. Reese walked into the WNBA with the swagger of someone ready to take over. She demanded attention, demanded respect, and demanded great players to surround her. But what she got instead was a mirror one that reflected her words back at her in the form of fractured chemistry, technical fouls, and suspensions that left her team scrambling without her. Clark, on the other hand, walked into the same storm with just as much pressure, maybe even more. Every arena she plays in sells out. Every camera follows her. Every opponent sees her as the trophy target. And yet, instead of crumbling under the weight, she's carried it with poise. She's elevated teammates, absorbed criticism, and turned pressure into fuel. Where Reese has divided, Clark has united. That's the contrast. Two rookies, two spotlights, two very different legacies already forming. One is fighting to convince her franchise she's worth the gamble. The other is proving night after night that she was the safest bet in the draft. And so, the question lingers. One that will define not just the next season, but maybe the next decade of the WNBA. If you had to build your franchise today, who would you choose, Angel Reese? The lightning rod, or Caitlin Clark, the leader in the storm? Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen and we will see you in the next